I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Realizing Potential. Today, I have with me in our virtual studio a young woman who has hit the ground running here in Albany, Georgia. She is certainly committed to the development of our community and working with a nationally acclaimed organization that you are very familiar with. I could go on and on, but I would like our viewers, you, to learn more about Miss Shaunae Motley, and she is with United Way. Shaunae, thank you so much. I know you have an extremely busy schedule, but I was so excited for us to finally connect with one another. We did it in passing. We're both doing tapings for, and I forgot the event. Time just seems to escape me these days. But certainly when we had a chance to finally say, "Hey, let me touch you. Let me chat with you for a minute," and then started making plans about possible collaborations. But I've heard so many great things about you, and you have great mentors. Judge Penny Brown Reynolds brags about you, and just a lot of individuals. You just have an essence about you that is certainly service oriented and certainly service based on service excellence. So tell us a little bit about your background and where that essence derives from, in your opinion, where you hail from, and then how we'll then segue into how you are in this wonderful opportunity. And we certainly view it that way here, impacting Southwest Georgia.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to first off and just thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. When I had the opportunity, I think we were both leaving the building, and I was like, Dr. Wilson, I finally get a chance to meet you. So I've heard so many great things about you. Obviously, Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, and from students and staff and just all of Albany. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I have been in Southwest Georgia for almost 6 years, at United Way for almost 2. But I was Atlanta born, bred, and raised, and I certainly give credit to my service orientation to my wonderful parents. My dad is a Baptist minister, very passionate about social justice. My mom is a retired school administrator, and they really laid the foundation for the work that I'm doing today. I will be honest, when I was studying at Georgia Southern University, I studied public relations and marketing, and I just knew that I would be on CNN or a TV station, but I did an internship at the Boys and Girls Club of Bullitt County in Statesboro. And from there, I saw that I could take my talents and skills and use it to really edify the community and build the community. My executive director at the time, Mike Jones, sent me a part-time worker to a national conference that was held in Phoenix, Arizona. And I saw that the Boys and Girls Club, which was acclaimed as the movement back in the day, 20 plus years ago, that there was a trajectory for leadership, and that I didn't have to remain in a place as a part-time director, but I could really navigate and still use my skills for marketing and PR for community service. And I was in the Boys and Girls Club movement. I worked in Statesboro, Atlanta, even went to California for a brief stint. And then I came back to Atlanta because obviously I had hired my replacement before leaving for California. And I had the opportunity to work for a former NBA player for a community development corporation. And there we were providing after school services. It was 2 staff members, myself and his sister. We had a program for 12 youth, and we were able to grow it over the course of 9 years to service over 4,000 youth and families annually with a staff of 34. And what we saw is that there's so many issues that stem from lack of educational involvement or educational success. And we began to really look at those issues, from teenage pregnancy prevention to substance abuse to parenting to reentry services. And we really built a comprehensive youth and family development organization. But what I will tell you is that even working in Atlanta there, I saw that there were huge disparities in the rest of Georgia. I'm sure you've heard of this notion of 2 Georgias, right? Metro Atlanta and everybody else. Sure. I knew that God was really calling me to really plant my skill set in the areas that needed it most. And coming to Southwest Georgia, particularly in some of the rural counties outside of Albany and Dougherty County, I saw that there were lack of services, but there were huge outcomes, right? The teenage pregnancy rate was much larger than the state average or the national average. And there were lack of youth development programs. And so I came with Quest for Change. I picked up my whole life, my daughter, and we moved here in 2015, and I have not looked back. And more recently, I had the opportunity to come to United Way, and being in direct service for nearly 20 years, you always have the answers that you want to give to your funders, right? They give you money for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and they expect you to change the world, but they don't help to build capacity. And so being able to come to an institution like United Way, who's a grant maker for so many wonderful organizations, training and technical assistance, and be able to give a unique perspective to philanthropy has been so rewarding. And it's a blessing to be here and to work alongside individuals like yourself to help move the community forward.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I'm certainly looking forward to working with you. I know the outstanding work that United Way does. I had the pleasure of serving on the board some years ago. This was prior to your arrival. But you said something, and we've been having this ongoing dialogue. You were talking about the whole outcomes piece and how they are so pervasive and acute in so many different ways. What I wrestle with all the time, and this is no criticism on the community, because again, there are just so many needs and so many pronounced inequities. You can pick a topic, pick a subject, and there it is. You can put, Albany, Georgia, Southwest Georgia, under that umbrella, if you will. The challenge that I find ourselves, a lot of organizations, and certainly Albany State University, in trying to address it, is you want to fix it all at one time, and that is not always doable, and you find yourself just spinning your wheels. And so that's where you have to be committed to whatever strategy you lay out. And so you and I were talking about a couple of weeks ago, so with any partnerships, then what do we want to focus on? Because there's 10 things to pick from, but efficacy is important. How will we make the needed impact, and giving ourselves enough time to address it, to assess it, to address it, then applying those resources. And it may mean saying no. We talked about saying no to some things that require some attention, but then prioritizing. And I know I just said a lot in that one statement, but what are your thoughts on that? That's certainly my assessment. But as you spoke of earlier, the needs, we talked about, there's Atlanta and then the rest of Georgia. And then the rest of Georgia has some pretty significant issues that it's wrestling with. And it's concerning to me, because if we don't get a grasp on it or handle on it, people are concerned about, are we standing still? My concern is, then will we go backwards in comparison to the rest of the world? So how are you dealing with that from a United Way scope, if you will?
Absolutely. So United Way really works in 4 impact areas for the education, the health, the financial stability, and the basic needs of every individual in Southwest Georgia. But we know that although these are the 4 core issues, that there are multiple issues that are interconnected. And I think we saw it most recently with COVID and just the huge impact it had on Southwest Georgia. We had many issues, from food insecurity to poor health infrastructure to substandard housing. But many of these issues were existing prior to COVID. They were just exacerbated by it. And so I think that United Way's role, we have a unique position in the community, and it's really to bring together stakeholders from multiple sectors to look at how can we look at transforming our community. We have so many nonprofits in Albany, Dougherty County alone. There are upwards of almost 1,000 that are registered by the Secretary of State. And many of them are doing great work, but they're going in different directions. This one is going here. And how are we coordinating our efforts to look at a single issue or a single impact focus? And that is the role that United Way plays as that convener and that connector. And it's our goal to look at those 4 impact areas. And some of the issues, for instance, crime, youth crime, which has been very prevalent in Albany, Georgia, that's not directly linked if you look on the surface, right, at health, education, financial stability, and basic needs, but we know it's connected in each one of those areas. And so it's our goal to come up with these single issues centered around those 4 impact areas, bring together stakeholders from multiple sectors, and look at what strategies are working and what's not working, which is not a comfortable space for some individuals. It could be that we've been doing things for multiple years, but we aren't moving that needle forward. And so it's a Herculean task, right? We know that it's going to take a lot, but I think the community will really rally behind solutions. And if we as a community can say in 2022, we want to move the needle on this, and this is how every program contributes to it, more people will be vested in helping out.
Sure. You reminded me of a conversation I was having, political analyst in DC, and she's from this area, Erica Savage Wilson, and doing a lot of work on kind of the national front, but always finds time to come back home. And she was very instrumental in the voter suppression and, the recent election. And so she said it was heightened for her, even more so having stepped out of that space, that there, as you mentioned a few moments ago, there are so many organizations here, they're really doing great work, but oftentimes we're replicating the same body of work and then not giving it any movement. So we're operating in silos. And so that unfortunate lack of cohesion also factors in our inability to advance. And so that's critical. We need to, so again, what's that one area of focus that we're going to really make an impact on? And then let's do that from a united position of unification, if you will. I was going to do a play on words, a United Way, wasn't successful on that.
Dr. Wilson, I will bring one particular initiative that we are looking to launch, and it's really about youth success and ensuring that young people ages 0 through 25 are thriving, because we know that when young people are thriving, communities thrive. And what started as we've created community buy-in and had focus group sessions is that although youth success is the ultimate goal and we can look at the child well-being, so many different factors play into that, from early childhood literacy to 8th grade success, to high school graduation rate, to unemployment, to housing, to poverty, to so many. There are a number of factors, from families being safe, so some of our partners who deal with domestic violence. And so there are multiple factors that play into that overall child well-being. And so that's what we're looking at targeting next year, youth success. And we've kind of named it already, Succeed Albany. It isn't official. We want to make sure that the community does that. And hopefully we can take it to scale throughout the region and have Succeed Southwest Georgia.
Good. Well, I'd certainly like to learn more about that. And if Albany State can factor in that in any way, we have several initiatives that we're very proud of that, again, focuses on, that elementary, particularly that those middle school years. That's a key time that we really need to begin the education and then hopefully indoctrination about the benefits of higher education. Now, I do recognize that that's not everybody's calling or ministry in life, if you will, to go and pursue a college degree. But we want to say that we've done our part in introducing. And whatever it is, if you don't decide to go get a 2-year or 4-year, that, again, help to emphasize the importance of formal education and that preparation phase. So many arrive, first-generation students, and then coming from underserved communities. And that underserved is just so broad within itself. And then having proper access, which then is a direct tie to just the pervasive inequalities that, are global in so many respects. So we're going to focus on the state of Georgia and how that just has a ripple effect through an individual's life. So we would love to partner with you in terms of targeting that demographic. Yeah. So what do you envision? We talked about just how no one ever saw 2020 coming. The best, I'm going to say, horror writer couldn't have written it. But I'm shifting my thinking. It awakened a lot in so many individuals and organizations and as a society, in terms of things of how we were not responding to one another, how we're not supporting one another, and the work that needs to be done. And it certainly put a huge spotlight on the inequities that exist. What are some of the challenges, and then what are some of the positive things that came out of 2020, specifically the pandemic? And we can even address the social unrest that occurred with the murder of George Floyd, and how has that impacted the work of United Way?
Absolutely. So, as many who are familiar with South Georgia know, is that we were quickly identified. We were in the headlines with Seattle and New York as having the fourth largest concentration of COVID very early on in the pandemic. And our community was struggling. We shut down on March 13th, and on March 16th, United Way of Southwest Georgia was ready to respond. And we immediately activated a relief fund and a number of other services from a neighborhood services program. We activated nonprofit leader assessment calls and our 211 line, which is a free resource and referral line. And the needs were greater than we had ever seen before. We saw a 941% increase in 211 calls and a need for services. And United Way crisis response is at the core of what we do. So prior to me being on board, but I was able to read about and see about the wonderful response that United Way had during the hurricanes and the disasters in 2017 and 2018. And so we were well positioned to be able to respond to our community's needs. And so we really mobilized partner agencies. We have a portfolio of 16 with our community impact, and we were able to onboard an additional 15 to 20 agencies throughout COVID relief response, which is still occurring. And I'm grateful that we were, even when you talk about inequities, able to onboard grassroots organizations led by people of color who ordinarily wouldn't have been a part of the United Way portfolio. And to date, we have served over 84,000 individuals across the region with relief services, from food distribution sites to medical PPE. Before it was plentiful, we were working with companies throughout the nation to bring PPE to the school system and to small businesses, barbers and salons who needed that service. We were also able to help with childcare, Phoebe and the YMCA for essential workers, the digital divide, which still exists, although schools have reopened. There are some young people who don't feel comfortable going in person. And so we've been able to supplement with programs at the Y and the Boys and Girls Club and communities and schools to be able to offer those services. So in the midst of loss and pain, we were able to step up, to be relevant, to mobilize, and to work together to really ensure that our community continued to move on. I will tell you that although we provided all of these services, we are far from where we need to be. And so we talked about that long-term systemic change, right? If another pandemic, if another disaster comes, is Southwest Georgia equipped to handle? We have often reacted and not been proactive. And so we launched this Reimagine campaign, right? So in the midst of this loss and in the midst of what we lack, how can we come together and reimagine what community is? We've been fortunate enough to leverage resources from Atlanta, foundations from across the country. We've raised nearly $1 million to surpass our regular campaign in COVID relief. But we're looking at long term. How do we build real solutions? And it means talking to individuals who you might not ordinarily talk with. It means sector building. You mentioned silos earlier. It means coming together because our skills and our talents are so much greater than the things that we lack. And so we're hoping that individuals will come on board for this Reimagine Albany initiative. We're looking at those key areas. So you talked about strategy. We want to be intentional. We don't want to be chaotic and all over the place, and really identifying those issues that impact what that growth and that recovery looks like.
So my mind is racing. No, that's a lot of good information. I paused for a minute. I heard everything that you said, but I'm thinking. No, I want to go back. How long have you been in the role as CEO? How long?
So almost 2 years. So next month will be 2 years, and a year of that has been COVID response.
Yeah, and that's what I was processing in my head. So you're just finding your way, and yes, my key fits in the door properly, and then it takes a minute. I say that jokingly, but then you need to come in and assess, understand what you've inherited, what changes you'd like to apply, if any, and then again map out what will happen. I always begin, what's the legacy that you're trying to build upon, and then kind of work backwards. So you're still in that process. And then COVID hits. And I cannot imagine, you reminded me, still exhaling from it, I know. I had a conversation just yesterday with a friend, and we're going back and forth, and he called to say, did you hear that President Biden has now tasked Vice President Harris with the immigration matter? And we had two different perspectives on it, and I exhaled, as you just did. My thoughts were, wouldn't it be nice to come into a role? And again, does my key really fit? My point is just sit down and plan and what the next steps are. But then oftentimes we inherit such monumental task, and that's an awful lot. That's an awful lot to do, and that expectation is that we deliver in stellar fashion. We oftentimes do, and I'm speaking of women, and then I'm more specific in Black women as well. And so here's a case, and so I used her as an example. I said, well, wouldn't it be nice if she could just kind of come in and, oh, okay, so this room, we do this, and let's plan the next 2 years. And now she has this. So his thing, well, I think she'll do a great job. And I said, I know she'll do a great job. She really has no choice but to do a great job. And she wouldn't have been given the opportunity in advance this far if there was not any demonstrated ability to do a great job. But it can be very taxing, because we just oftentimes don't get the luxury of walking in and then all is well, and then moving and planning from there. I bring it for me to bring it home in your particular case, and then here you basically walked in the door and had to deal with COVID. Go ahead.
And what I will say is that COVID was a blessing in a sense. As you said, a lot of times oftentimes when you come in and you're managing a turnaround, and I don't say that because there wasn't a rich legacy and a foundation, because United Way, particularly for our community, has been in existence for 67 years, and it's been an honor to build on that rich legacy. But as we know, with any business operations, you have to constantly reinvent yourselves. And particularly for a philanthropic entity, United Way was known for an agency that fundraised on behalf of other agencies. And we are so much more. And so we were dealing with, how do we convert into this modern United Way? And so COVID actually forced us to pivot and adjust at the right time. So we were looking at digital transformation for operations and digital infrastructure and employee skill sets kind of shifting. And so COVID forced us to be able to authentically transition into those steps.
Very good. That's the blessing in disguise. You got to glean the blessings, and you're absolutely right. They're countless. So I don't want to retract my statement about it being very horrific, because there were, as we know, a lot of horrific aspects of it. But you're absolutely right. It forced us to think out of the box consistently, and to adapt, and to I was listening to a podcast the other day, and people were talking about how genius was birthed out of 2020 in so many different aspects and levels, and I totally agree. We will have you back to discuss, what our partnership will be like as it relates to Albany State, and then the initiative that I've been fortunate enough to manage and lead, and what your plans are for the next couple years. But one of the things that we've been focusing on here as a result of 2020 and the pandemic is the importance and the consistency and the normalization of mental health and wellness. So having said that, tell us what you do to maintain that. And if you're a work in progress, we love the transparency because both my hands are raised. I'm a work in progress. But what do? You have a very important role, and your service not only impacts the organization, but you are a service provider. So thousands and thousands of people. So it's important that you are well. So what do you do to maintain that space?
It obviously is a journey, and I'm not particularly good at it, but I'm learning that it's necessary, especially as a leader and as a mother and as a friend, that you do have to take that time out. And I really talk with my team about how you can't pour from an empty cup. And so it's important that we practice work-life balance and that we do those things that give us the moment to aha and to woosah. And so I will say, as I go on that journey, more recently, I found that working out is really, really helpful. In fact, I'm new on this journey, as you can see, but 4:30 this morning, Planet Fitness, and it was only 30 minutes, but giving me the opportunity in a COVID safe environment with my mask on, with not a lot of people there, the opportunity to exercise, to get those endorphins going, and to really give an honor to God who has sustained me throughout this. And so it's almost like my worship time when I'm able to worship and to work out at the same time. Also spending time with my family and my daughter. I have a 15-year-old. She just turned 15 on yesterday, and being able to have girl time with her. And obviously because of COVID, we can't travel like we used to, but if we're going to a state park or doing our nails or reading a book. And so I want to make sure that I'm instilling that love for reading for her as well. And so those are ways that I practice self-care for myself, because my friends are all over the country. We do Zoom sessions and we do Zoom cooking classes and things of that sort. So that's very helpful too. So family and faith and friendship.
Very good. Very good. Well, it is time for us to wrap up this great conversation. I knew it was going to go by quickly. It always does. And so when we come back, I'll give you some homework assignments. The next time I have you on, you'll have to then share with us. You mentioned reading with your daughter, and I'm a avid reader. And so you'll have to share the book that has most impacted your life. And then you mentioned cooking. So the next question that I'll have you to answer is, if you could invite 3 famous people to dinner, who would they be and what would you serve? So we'll get our calendars in sync, have you back on, and then we'll also by that time be able to share with the greater community what our collaborative plans are for the rest of the year, and then moving on forward into 2022. I can't believe it. It's time to start prepping for that. It's unbelievable. It has been a pleasure having you on the show today. I am so, so proud that you were here, and so very proud of your presence and the impact that you've already made and that you will continue to make.
Thank you so much, Dr.
You're very welcome. Know that you're welcome on the show anytime, and we'll get those new dates forthcoming to get those other questions answered.
Okay. Thank you.
You too. Viewers, thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Realizing Potential. It is always a pleasure. Continue to be safe. Continue to be safe. Continue to be safe. And I will see you next time.